Hello, everyone. It's your girl, Gabrielle. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. And once again, I am doing this outside on my phone. So, shout out to StreamYard for having the technology to be able to do this. But yes, all right. So, bear with me uh, as I go through this. All right. So, let me tell you what this show is about. So y'all may hear some background noise. So let me tell you what this show is about. So this is the show where we like to talk about real things. We like to talk about those hot button topics, or things that we don't really have a lot of conversations about. But we like to focus on a lot of different topics pertaining to education, mental health, social services, employment. We've done topics on homeschooling, disabilities, entrepreneurship. We've done a lot of different topics in those arenas. And today is no different. So today I am excited about this topic because I always wanted to have this discussion because I have my own personal experience with it. And I actually found someone. So there's going to be a lot of moving around. I actually found someone who I can have this discussion with. So the topic for today is, let me get this here, study abroad, right? We're going to talk about studying abroad. I studied abroad back in college, so it's nice to be able to talk to another person who also studied abroad. And I'm also excited about this topic because I have a repeat guest, you guys. I love it when the guests come back to the hot seat. Her name is Carrie Meyers. I think this is her fourth time on the show, her fourth interview or fourth or fifth interview. So I love it when they come back, and we're going to hash it out, you guys. So we're going to be talking about studying abroad today. And let me just remind you about Carrie Meyers. She is a former teacher. No, I think she's still a teacher, right? And she started her business because teachers were getting burned out. They were not taking care of themselves. They were being weighed down by the school system. And so she created her business to address teachers, to address burnout, and to make things easier for teachers. So that's a brief overview about her. So I am going to go ahead now and bring her to the stage. Hey there, how you doing?
Hey, Gabrielle, good to see you again. I am doing well. I'm excited to talk about studying abroad. It also happened back in college, so I don't always reminisce about college, but my study abroad time was really, really valuable. So it's going to be great to talk about it with you.
Yeah, awesome. So, I definitely, I want to, I don't know if you want to share horror stories. I don't know if you want to go that deep, but let's get into it. So, don't mind all the noise. I'm outside. All right. So, I would love to hear your study abroad story. Where did you go? Why did you go there? Et cetera, et cetera. Give us the full deets.
Yeah, I actually went into college knowing that I wanted to spend my junior year abroad. That was like the only thing I knew about going into college. I actually really resisted being a teacher for a long time, but I loved my French classes in middle and high school. And I had heard stories about my mom studying abroad in Freiburg, Germany in the 70s, and how it was such like a powerful experience for her. And this was like, way back before technology even allowed you to call the United States or, between the United States and Germany. So she spent, as far as I remember, like 9 or 10 months there with just like letters back and forth to the United States. And I was like, oh man, I mean, we have the internet now. We have other ways that I can stay in contact with people. And I just knew that like I wanted that experience of going abroad. So when I was looking at colleges, I looked immediately at what they had in terms of offerings for study abroad. And I was really disappointed in a lot of the schools that I looked at because almost all of them had programs to Paris. And I was like, well, Paris is cool, but like that's just the capital of France. It's one place that a lot of people get to go. I was really interested in going somewhere that was French speaking, but wasn't like typical. So I remember that my top two schools that I was interested in attending were University of Delaware and University of Maryland. And I grew up in New Jersey, which has excellent public schools. So I started learning French in seventh grade up through my senior year of high school. And I thought I was going to be a French major along with maybe like international relations or political science or something. So I figured experience abroad would be really beneficial. Um, and when I visited the University of Delaware, I loved the campus. I loved the proximity to my family. And they had a program that went to Martinique in the Caribbean, which I ended up going to in my 30s. And oh my God, it was amazing. And then the University of Maryland similarly loved the campus. I had an older cousin who had gone there. Shout out to my cousin Brad. And he had a great experience there, and University of Maryland's French and Italian department had a program that went to Nice, France, which is in the south of France along the Mediterranean. And I was like, okay, like I love both of these colleges and I'm interested in both of these places. I ended up choosing to go to University of Maryland. And you can't really see it behind me, but I'm going to move the camera a little bit. I have pictures behind me of Nice. So this is actually a picture I took and that got blown up. And it's of the Nice harbor, along with La Baie des Anges, which is right along the Mediterranean. And then both of these paintings on either side of it, I bought at the Nice market on Corsalea, which is a very, very popular outdoor market. And then this right behind me, Nice has like the third maybe largest Carnival celebration in the world, like after Rio and Italy and other places in the Caribbean. So I ended up being there for 9 months and had an absolutely amazing time. I did that for my junior year. And I think let's stop there and then you can ask me any questions and then we can delve into the details.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty interesting so far. So, I mean, because it looked like because I had a slightly different experience in that, I mean, you studied abroad because you were learning French, right? And so it's similar to my experience in that I was actually studying Italian, so that's why I ended up going to Rome. Um, yeah, and the thing is, like, you were already in college, right? And you had to find another school to go to do it,
Well,
right?
no, it was through the University of Maryland. So in like enrolling for my degree as a French major, I like added on that I was going to go to the program in Nice. So all of the credits that I took there immediately went towards my um, major in French.
Oh, okay. So you stayed in the same school. You just went to a different campus.
Yeah, yeah. So I was just what I was saying was that I was choosing between the two schools from when I was in high school. So I was looking at University of Maryland and University of Delaware, but I ended up choosing
Yeah.
University of Maryland because of their program.
Oh, so that's interesting. So you were already thinking ahead in
Yeah,
terms of
exactly.
studying abroad.
Yeah.
So
That was like a requirement for a college that I was going to go to was that I wanted it to have a really cool study abroad program.
how long did you study abroad?
I was there for about 9 months. It was for my junior year.
Oh wow, I did my first semester. I was only for like 3 or 4 months. Um, so I mean, it's interesting because like I stayed within my school. I went to Temple University in Philadelphia, and um, I was already studying Italian before, and so I just continued it while I was in college, and then I found out that Temple had a study abroad program, and they just so happened to go to Rome. So I'm like, okay, I
So
want to sign
cool.
up. So mine was more of a like a spur of the moment. Spur of the moment decision. But and I was also similar in that my credits carried over. Um, because I took a lot of like Italian courses because I was also an Italian minor, so I could only have Now it's coming back to me now, but I took a lot of electives. So there's like the main courses and then there's electives. So I don't think I was able to use any of the main credits, but I managed to get a lot of electives, so it worked out. But so it's interesting how both of us we were studying another language and that inspired us to go to the country where that language was spoken.
Yeah,
So it's
that's so
interesting how
important.
languages inspired us to pursue international studies.
Yeah, I think I mean, I've never been schooled anywhere else, but like having grown up in the United States and realizing how little emphasis is placed on learning another language, I
Yeah.
was always like baffled by that. I was like, how could you not want to learn another history, another culture? Because like you learn so many more things than just like how to translate a language, from English to French. It's like you're learning how they think about different tenses and how they view history, and you learn about the art, you learn about the food, and like all of that was so interesting to me. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to ever get that unique experience or authentic experience here in the United States. Like, I have to go to the place where the language is spoken.
Yeah, and you wanted to challenge yourself too in speaking the language.
Oh my god, yeah, and I bet you experienced this too, where you probably were the studier and you like did all of the things and you got the good grades, and then you got there and you were like, I don't know how to speak this language, like, because you didn't
Yeah,
actually have the like authentic situations to actually use the language in a way that was like practical.
yeah, because all whenever I studied Italian, it's always like the textbook Italian, right? So it's funny because when you're studying another language, it's always like the whatever's in the textbook. It's always like the intellectual form of the language
Yeah,
or the proper language, right? And then when you go to the other country where the language is spoken, it's like 80% slang,
totally.
which you don't even know. And then it's like the way they taught you in school is not quite how they speak in that country. And
Yeah.
so
I
that was a
remember
culture shock right there.
I remember getting there. So I was there in the fall, and then we had another group of students who came in the spring. And at one point, I went to like a party, and a bunch of those students in the spring had like made friends with some French people who at the party were like, you all speak like you're from the 1800s. And it's because we had been learning like Voltaire and Montaigne and like all
Yeah.
of the, and like Hugo and like all of these people who wrote at that time. And so we're speaking this like very, very proper old French. And yeah, we don't sound anything like, 19, 20, 21-year old should.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. And then, I mean, in a way, I kind of got away with it because, like, the when it comes to Rome, I don't know what part of France you were in, but where my school is in the city, like the metropolis of Rome, and so most of you can get away with speaking English,
Sure.
so it wasn't like there was some parts where I was like forced to speak Italian, but that was like outside of the city and in like suburbia. And so, I discovered that about Rome. Like there's a metropolis part where, it's very touristy and you can get away with speaking English. And then where I stayed, because I stayed with the family, it's outside the city. It's in the suburbs where, you're forced to speak Italian because there's barely any English. And so I'm wondering, like, did you have that similar experience where, there's the metropolis part, and then you go out to like the suburbs, and it's a completely different experience?
Yeah, so Nice is the fifth largest city in France, so it
Yeah.
has, quite a big population. But it is in the south of France, and it's actually like an hour away from the Italian border. So there is a dialect of French that is spoken in Nice called Niçois or
Yeah.
Languedoc, and it has this sort of Italian influence to it. And I, of course, didn't learn that before I went there. I still don't really know it, but it was like such an interesting, just like flair to the language.
Yeah.
um, I chose not to stay with a family. I know that that would have been better for my language learning, but I was like, I'm going to be here a year. I don't want to feel like I have a chaperone, like I have to check in with a family. So I ended up staying in an apartment that had six different like rooms in it. And every single person in the apartment was from like a different place. So I was in the first room. The second room was another guy from the University of Maryland. The third room was a Spanish guy. And then in the other, and so the three of us were there the entire year together. And then the other three rooms, we rotated between a French guy, a Belgian girl, an Italian woman, another Spanish girl. And then we had like two toilets at the end of the hall and then two showers at the like beginning of it and then like a shared little kitchen, but there wasn't even like a living room area. It was like everyone,
Uh,
it was almost like a dorm. It was like
a
everyone
dorm.
had
Yeah.
your
You were
own
in a
little
dorm.
room
Yeah.
with your own little fridge, your desk, your little futon, your closet. And then it was just like a long hallway of like rooms. And it was cool because we were all, from different countries. And where I was in Nice was like really close to Vieux Nice, which is like the old town. And there were a
Yeah.
lot of cool like bars and restaurants to go to, many of which would have, we'd go to like the Irish pub and the English pub. So definitely places that you didn't have to speak French. And like our house kind of became the like congregating place to hang out before we all went out to the bars. So I ended up meeting people. Like I had really good Mexican friends, Colombian friends, yeah, Italian, Belgian, Israeli, German, Danish, like people from all over the world that we all just like met through our different programs. And then like our house was kind of the landing pad.
Oh, so you had a so you it was a shared dormitory pretty much
Yeah,
that
it
you
was
were
called
in.
an apartment, but yeah, it was
Sorry, one
very.
second. What? No, I just got it. Sorry. Okay. Whoops. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it was technically an apartment, but it kind of had the layout of a dormitory, which was cool.
Yeah. So, because I know, like my school, they they um they gave a bunch of housing options, right? So it was you could either stay in like a dormitory type thing, or you could stay with a family, or you could live privately where you find your own place. And I guess Temple is really like they like to keep all their kids together. So now that I hear you talk, I'm like, oh, okay. Temple kids like to stay together. So, because Temple had their own dorm where all their kids were together. I mean, like I said, I chose to stay with the family because I wanted to really immerse myself in the culture. So I had like, I guess, a host mistress and her daughter, and so that was an interesting thing there. So now, what did you stay in France the whole time? Because
I
when I
got
was
to
in Rome, yeah,
travel around a lot, which was really cool. So Nice has its own airport, and they had EasyJet, which was like the really inexpensive flight option in Europe. So I
yeah,
remember like I flew up to Poland, to Scotland, to Germany, to England, to Italy, to Spain, all for like 100 euros or less. It was unbelievable. This was also 2006, 2007. So, things were a little different back
yeah,
then. But it was amazing. I mean, we followed like a typical university schedule, and what was neat was that when we got there, we all took like a placement exam. So I was placed in like the highest level of French because I had, done well on my APs. I had, a lot of credit. I had a lot of like the academics underneath, under my belt. And then when I got there, they were like, oh, yeah, you're in the highest level. So I remember like taking philosophy classes in French and being like, I don't actually think I have enough French to understand like very complex philosophical ideas, but I'm going to give it a try. But then so we followed that for the first semester where I was in this like troisième degré, so like the highest level. And then we had a 6-week winter term, which corresponded with the University of Maryland. And so I just traveled for those 6 weeks, like from,
Yeah.
December through the end of January. And then from February until the end of May, I basically had already maxed out my French credits that I needed for my degree. And I was just taking like a couple of university level classes, like with actual French students. So I took like an art history class, I took a film class, but it was just pass fail. So I didn't go to class a lot
Oh
that
no.
second semester, but I passed everything because it was like I already had all the credits I needed. And so I basically just like was able to travel around. And like my brothers came over and we did like a 3-week European trip together. I got to go visit my dad who was working in Poland for like a week or two. I got to visit like people who I had met. Like I got to go visit them and their families in different places. So I took as much advantage of like being in Europe as I could.
Yeah, I think you did more than I did
Well, I
because
was there for a year, so like I was able
yeah,
to have
that
that
made more sense.
flexibility.
Like I was there for like 3 or 4 months. Like
Yeah,
I think I traveled to. It's funny, like when you go to another country, you end up wanting to traveling more.
totally.
Um, so I think I went to Switzerland. I went to Tunisia. I went to wait, no, I think Tunisia. No, yeah, I went to Tunisia. Yeah, so I went to Tunisia, Switzerland, Germany. Um, I think that's it in terms of countries that I
Amazing.
went to. And it's fun. It's like, do you find that when you're in another country, you end up wanting to explore more as opposed to like when you're home, it's like you could technically explore, but you really don't want to go anywhere. Like I'm wondering if you felt that way.
Yeah,
Like
and I
I'm already in Europe. Let's explore
totally.
Europe
And
as
and I
opposed to like
feel I feel very privileged that like my family was, well off enough and able to like afford us opportunities to travel when we were younger, like in as a part of my family. So I kind and like I said, my mom had this experience studying abroad and she spoke Spanish and German. And then I had an older brother who spoke German. My dad started learning French. I had another, yeah, I have 3 siblings. One studied German, one studied Spanish, and one studied French. And then I studied French. And then my dad started studying French after I did. He learned Polish because he had to keep going to Poland for work. So, like, I came from a family that already kind of had this international interest in both traveling and in like my maternal grandfather was born in Germany. My paternal grandfather. Nope, nope. I was right the first time. And then my
take your
maternal
time.
great grandparents were born in Italy. So I had
Yeah,
like pretty close relations that were still in those countries, and like we talked enough about it that it was like very fresh in my mind from a young perspective that like I am German, I am Italian, like I had these heritages that
yeah,
like I wanted to explore. And then like I was saying earlier with like learning a language, that opened up my eyes so much that like once I learned French, I learned a little bit of Italian, I learned some Portuguese, I've learned Spanish, I've learned some German. I've learned like it definitely gave me more of that itch of being like, well, if I want to travel somewhere, I want to be able to address someone in their language. Like I'm not going to be fluent everywhere I go, but if I can at least say like, hello, goodbye, please, thank you, excuse me. Like I am making more of an effort than many Americans do when they travel abroad, and they see that as a gesture and it's reciprocated. Like if I'm going to make the effort, then they're going to make the effort back. Like when people always talk about, how the French are so stuck up and snobby, I'm like, it's probably because you're a loud American, right? It probably does not have to do so much with them, but it's about the fact that Americans tend to be these arrogant people who show up like everyone should just speak English. And I never understood how. I mean, I completely understood why the French would then kind of diss Americans. I was like, we do kind of suck when we travel. But if we're making the effort, like you said that you stayed with a family so you could improve your Italian. I bet that went so far in terms of like being able to talk to people and get to know them and travel to other places because you were actually making that effort.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like most of my experience abroad, I stayed in Rome. So I probably stayed in Rome like 2/3 of the time. And it was also a financial thing why I stayed in the country. But in staying in the country, I learned a lot about the culture. And my school, they had like this tourist guide of like all the events that were happening. So, I mean, I used that guide and I looked for things that were free. So I ended up going to museums and movie theaters and plays. And so I saw a lot of like free things that were happening around in Rome. And I also learned about like the transportation system and how do the buses work and the trains work. And, even something simple as going to a store to buy toothpaste, and now I have to say I want toothpaste in Italian, you know,
Totally.
and it's you end up immersing yourself in the culture as well, especially when you don't really have a choice because you can't really go anywhere. But it's a chance to actually explore a different city and actually challenge yourself to
Well,
pick up a different culture.
yeah, and just what you were saying, like, going to the supermarket or like, in France, like, and I know in Italy too, like the markets, the outdoor markets are such a huge part of the culture. Like I remember going to a stand and like, picking up tomatoes and like basically having my hands swatted and then being like don't touch everything, and like they like looked at them and then they were able to be like, okay, this is the one that you're going to take, as opposed to
Wow.
like what we're used to doing, which is like, well, I'm gonna feel them all or whatever. And I remember other situations where like someone would come up to me and they would ask me a question and I'd respond in French, and then they'd respond back in English like, oh, your French is pretty good. I was like, well, thank you. Like I'm trying, like I felt, in immersing myself in the daily culture of like going to a market, going to a museum, checking out a monument or something, I would get this whole other like window into what life was like there. And that taught me so much more than like the textbook could.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought it up because I had like, I guess a humiliating experience. I was in the city. I don't remember where I was, and a group of kids came up to me, and I knew they were asking like, "Where's the McDonald's?" So I think at that point I knew how to give directions. I was like, "Go to the right." I mean, I was saying it in Italian, like it's go to the right, and I think like they asked me like how many blocks, and my brain just froze, and I was just and then they were like, oh, she's American. She may not know how to respond. And they were like, okay, thank you. And like that was humiliating because I'm like, oh, I knew they were saying like, where's the McDonald's? And I'm like, it's to the right. Like I knew how to give directions, but they were like how far away? And my brain just completely froze.
And that
So
happens. Like, sometimes
yeah.
you just have to work with what you have. And I mean, it was amazing to me in the places that I traveled where I didn't speak a lot of the language, how far like gestures and, like I said, just being able to say, please, thank you, excuse me, how much could be communicated with like a, you know, a head nod and a gesture and a s'il vous plaît or a, you know, prego or whatever it is. You know, and people will appreciate that. They'll be like, oh, she's like trying, you know, and like, yes, sometimes you get those jerks who would condescend to you or make fun of you. But I think for the most part, people would be like, that's pretty cool. Like I know personally, whenever I've traveled somewhere and I start speaking French, most people assume that I'm from Canada. Because Canada has a bilingual school system in many parts of it. And so if I'm starting to speak French and they're like, oh, vous êtes Canadienne? I'll be like, no, American. And they're like, an American who speaks French? It's like this completely just unexpected twist. And I'm like, well, yeah, like we're not all what all the stereotypes say we are, you know? Like I
Yeah.
am making the effort. I'm okay if you want to, you know, confuse me for a Canadian, but like I'm trying to slowly dismantle this stereotype that all Americans are, you know, loud, obnoxious travelers.
Yeah, I got that too. Like I got the stereotypical American vibe when I was in
Totally.
Italy, but I guess also because of my race, they also like, oh, like, are you from Kenya? Are you from Africa? And it's it's a weird vibe when people can tell that you're from another country. Like they'll just look at you weird. They'll ask you weird questions, and it's like even there was a one, I guess, a teacher at my school. He was like, people are going to look at you weird. They're going to just stare at you. Like that's something that Italians like to do, is just stare.
Yeah,
And it's like a warning, like, you know it's like a reminder that you're an outsider, and so people are going to treat you like an outsider. So it's
totally.
interesting. And then people are like, oh, you're from America? Why is all this going on in the world? And it's like,
Oh,
you're the representative of America. And I'm like, I don't know. you know? So
yeah.
people just look at you like, oh, you're from America? Why is all this happening? What's going on with your president? And I'm like, I don't know.
Right, like, I have the answer to everything, like, no, but, no, I hear what you're saying, and you know, I'm a white-bodied person, so, like,
yeah.
many places I go, I have the privilege of having a white body, but the only place where I think I experienced something similar to what you're describing was when I went to Japan, because there is a very, very definitive line in Japan between those who are Japanese and then those who are foreigners, which is called gaijin. And it was, I feel like the whole time I was there, it was like I was watching a movie. It was very surreal, because there was just like no way of integrating. And it gave me just like a sliver of perspective of what, you know, a non-white body has to, you know, encounter when they're in a predominantly white space. And in Europe, like I could pass for most places to be like, oh, like you could be German, you could be Spanish, you could be this, you know, and I recognize that I hold that privilege.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not to make this a racial thing, but it's like, did you ever, have to like be cautious everywhere you go because that like the people there, like they saw you're American, and so like you're more likely to be robbed because you're American or you're a
Mm,
foreigner or something like that? Did you have that outsider, I'm not from here type
yeah,
fear?
not so much. So I would say probably more being, you know, like a female presenting person was more the thing that I had to worry about, was like
Yeah.
being a white lady walking around at night. I had to be really, really careful. And that was most everywhere I traveled. And that's actually most everywhere in the world. You know, that's just like the MO of being careful of yourself. But I do remember, when I took a group of students to France. It was in 2016, and it was just after there had been a big terrorist scare in the Brussels airport. And we were in Paris. And I remember getting a call from like my head of school and the person who's in charge of like our travel insurance. And they were like, listen, We don't know exactly what's going on in the Brussels airport right now, but we know that it's been like, a terrorist threat. We don't want you as like the leader of this, expedition with students,
Yeah,
to take public transportation. We don't want you to walk around speaking English, and we want to make sure that like you get on your flight as fast and as easily as possible. So what should have been like a 2-day trip in Paris ended up being like cramming everything we could into like 9 hours. And I was in my 30s at the time, and I had I think it was like 17, 16, and 17-year olds. And I was explaining to them, this is what is happening as we know it right now in the Brussels airport. And so, for our safety as Americans, we need to be as discreet as possible on the Paris streets. Like, we're not going to be taking the metro anywhere, so we have to walk everywhere. We're going to be on the streets, so we can't speak English. And, like, obviously, you want that to be the situation for students anyway when they're studying abroad, but like, it's natural when you get a group of Americans together. Of course, they're going to speak English. But I was like, if we want to be safe in this capital city that is not far from where this terrorist attack and threat was happening, we're
yeah,
going to have to be really, really smart. And I mean, the kids were troopers, because they were like, well, we still want to see Paris. And we ended up walking like, I don't know, 11 miles in 8 hours, like all over Paris, to like try to get all the major monuments in. And they spoke French on the streets, like, yes, we were a big group of people, but like, we tried not to draw attention to ourselves that we were Americans, because we didn't want that, you know, potential threat to follow us.
yeah, yeah. And it's always like you always got to be on your toes. Like when you travel outside the country, they're always like, try not to travel by yourself, or make sure
Totally.
it's always in a group, or don't travel at night. Like there's always like that, like the boogeyman will come get you type mentality. And so like that was some, because I usually like travel by myself anyway, but it's always like, be aware of your surroundings, like how they usually tell you here back in America, but there it's like, okay, like double and triple, like, be aware of your surroundings, because, you're not from here, and, the locals will
Yeah.
take advantage of you.
Yeah, I think some of that is fear mongering. I think that like reverse stereotype can be really harmful too. That like, oh, you're just going to be, a target for pickpocketers. There's all these, street urchins who are running around, and they're just going to like slice your purse off. And it's like, yes, that's very possible that is, you're going to encounter something like that in a big city. But also, if you're smart about it, you'll probably be okay. And if you're not, again, drawing attention to yourself with the like passport holder and the fanny pack and the this and that, like, you're not like putting the spotlight on you like, I am not from here, you're probably going to be fine. So I think it's really important that you learn smart traveling, tips, which I was really grateful that when we did the study abroad program, we did like a little crash course, like before we went, to kind of be like, these are a lot of kind of the day-to-day things you haven't learned in your textbook that you
Yeah.
probably should be aware of. And then on the reverse, like coming back, we kind of had this whole like workshop on like reverse culture shock, which was a term I had never heard of before, but it was a really great way of like of kind of like easing the shock of like, oh, now I'm back to like my regular life, living in my parents' house, like going to college, or working a job or whatever, and not having this like amazing experience where I'm meeting new people and traveling to new places. You kind of had to have that book ended for this trip, so that way you weren't sitting there and like walking into this experience completely, aloof to the dangers and the realities of the culture. And then on the reverse side, coming back and being like, wow, I'm like super depressed, which happens. I don't know if you experienced that when you came
Yeah,
back, but I certainly
it was
did.
kind of it was kind of weird because it's like you're already it's like I already got used to living in Rome, and it's you create a routine and you're already immersed in the culture, you already develop a structure, and it's like, okay, now it's time to go. And you come back to America, and it's like, this is weird. I'm not traveling to different countries, and I guess that's the thing too about Europe is it's part of the EU, so it's easy to travel to different countries as opposed to like here in America where it's just like one country. But it was weird coming back because it's like a very long jet lag. I don't
Oh,
know how to
yeah.
describe it. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, wait, everyone speaks one language here, and like I don't have to speak Italian. Like, oh, I could just speak English, and so it's like when you're so used to a culture already, and then now you have to go back to the old ways. It's like, whoa, this is weird.
Yeah, and you kinda come back
Mhm.
with, like, new eyes, right? Like, you have either been, removed from the culture for so long that, like, you stopped identifying with it or, like, you forgot certain things, and then you come back and it's like you're smacked in the face with, like, how American everything is, and you're like, "Ugh, this is just not as good."
And the
But that's
food.
that's
Did you
all an
have
illusion too.
Did you have a thing with the food? Like when it comes
Mm,
to like soda, like wh- it, something like I'm trying to think like the thing with the food, you experience that, oh, it tastes different than the way it's in America. So something like soda, and like
totally.
the soda is like sweeter in Europe, and then like you drink that same soda in America, it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
I taste a difference. So did you
For
notice that when it came to food?
For me, I think it was butter was, like, the biggest revelation I had was that, like, oh my god, when you cook everything in butter and you, like, cover everything in butter, it tastes amazing, and then you come back to the United States and it's like I mean, not a lot of places, but some places are more health conscious, so they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, like, we don't, do things with butter," and it's like, "Why not?" I was, like, slapping, like, salted butter on, like, everything, 'cause, like, you'd go get a baguette, like, and that was, like, you'd get a sandwich on a baguette, and it would be, like, ham and cheese and butter, like, that was the sandwich. It was so good. It was so good that I was like, I never would have thought, like, prior like, I was like, "Oh, you put butter on, like, a bagel or on toast or something, but you don't put anything else on it," and then, like, my world was opened up when I was like, "Oh my god, I can put butter on these things and it tastes better?"
And I think too, like like in Rome, there's this thing with like water. So like
Mhm.
when I went to restaurants, like here in America, like water is always free in a
Yes.
restaurant. It's something small, and then you go to a restaurant in Rome, and oh, okay, I'll have some water. Oh, you have to pay for it. What?
Yeah,
Like, wait, you have to pay for water here? Like, it's just that blew my mind, and because I'm so used to like, oh, water is free wherever you go, and then
totally.
you go to Rome, and it's like, no, you have to pay for it. And you're like,
Mhm.
oh, like
Yeah,
that
that
was, yeah, that
and
blew my mind.
paying for public toilets too, that I was like, "What are you
Mm,
talking about? I have to pay to go to the bathroom." And, like,
yeah,
usually it's like 50 cents or something, but I was just like the idea of it was like, "This is ridiculous. I just need to go to the bathroom, like, can I just walk in and do it?"
yeah, and then like because like eating outside, like walking around with food, like that was another shock to me. Like I'm so used to like walking with coffee or eating outside, and like with Rome, it's like they look at you weird, like what are you doing?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know, and it's like walking with food on a bus. They look at you weird, like what are you doing? You
totally,
know?
because meal times are very valued. I mean,
Yeah,
particularly in, like, the French, Spanish, and Italian cultures, it's like you don't do anything else. Like, there's no TV on, there's no music on, like, you're sitting with your family, you're sitting at the table, you are engaging in conversation, you're
yeah,
having a first course, a second course, a third course. then, like for instance, in Spain, like then you have a nap, you have your siesta afterwards, right? But like if you go to a cafe in France, you just
Yeah.
sit there. Like you can buy a coffee and a croissant and just sit there and people watch for hours, and you will never be hurried off of your table. You will never be like pressured to buy anything else, because it's normal in the culture to just take your time with your
Yeah.
food, with your coffee, with your wine. And that was, I mean, again, it was something that they prepared us for, but until you're actually there and experience it, you don't really like get it. And then I remember like coming back and being like exactly what you were saying, like, oh yeah, everyone's like walking around with their coffee, walking around with a sandwich. And it's like, no, I want to sit and enjoy this. I don't like this like multitasking, like kind of rush around culture. Like I want to enjoy what I'm eating or drinking.
Yeah. So it's definitely, and like here in America, everything is like rush, rush, rush. And when I went to Rome, things were very like chill and relaxed, and it's like, oh, things are slow over here,
Yeah.
and it's sort of like you had to adjust to that. Like there's no hurry to do anything, so it's very like it's very laid back. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All right. So, we gotta, I'm gonna wind things down now. So now I know I usually say words of wisdom, but I'll say this. So for anyone who wants to go to school abroad, or, what would your advice be, for anyone who's looking to travel to a different country to go to school? What's a piece of advice that you want to share that maybe you wish you knew?
I think it's just do it. I think that's the advice I have, is like, you're always going to find an excuse not to. Like, for instance, my sister, she's younger than me, and she graduated from college and then applied for the Fulbright program to go teach English in Germany after she
Yeah.
graduated. And it was like a year until she heard the decision from Fulbright that said, like, we accept you. She almost didn't go because she was like, oh, like our grandma's getting older, and we want, then she's moved close, and we want to, I want to be close to her, and like, oh, we have like our new niece that I want to spend time with and everything. And we were like, you have to go. Like, there will always be a reason to keep you here, but this is an opportunity you don't want to miss. And within 3 months of living there, she met the man of her dreams that she is now married to. She's been living there for 5 years. She's working there. She lives with him. She lives, like her whole life kind of took off after she decided to step out of her comfort zone and go. And I think that for anyone who is in college or high school, or is looking at just like an exchange or work abroad kind of situation, if you have the ability to access the funds, to access the support that you need, and to feel like it's going to be a safe and comfortable environment, do it. Because even if you're terrified, even if you don't know the language, even if you have dietary restrictions or you have fear and anxiety, like, you are going to have an experience that you will never be able to have anywhere else. And to be able to give yourself the gift of stepping out of your comfort zone and just allowing yourself to experience the world through another culture's, eyes for a little bit of time is beyond worth it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So just do it,
Yeah,
and
just do it.
actually get involved, and don't just go and then stay in the house all day. Like, actually go out into the city, and I mean, just to add to what you said, like
Oh,
to
totally.
actually go places, travel
Yeah,
to new
do those
places.
free museums, do the
Yeah,
free movies, do the plays. Like, there's always opportunities. And again, even if you're doing it on a budget, or you're staying in a situation where like you have to work and live, like, find an opportunity to just walk around and to see these things, and to have a maybe like a conversation partner, a teacher, anyone who can just give you a little bit of guidance along the way, and it's going to be beyond worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. All right. So, Carrie, thank you so much for joining me again. Let me put up your banner. All right, you guys. So, Carrie's information is scrolling below at the bottom of your screen for my video people. And for my audio people, don't you worry. I did not forget about you. This information is in the description. So, I encourage you to follow Carrie on all of her social media accounts. She's on Facebook, she's on Twitter, she's on Instagram, LinkedIn. I also added her link tree there. So all of those links are there for you. So I encourage you to stay in touch with her, to learn more about her and her services. If you want to pick her brain, you're looking for, if you're a teacher and you're looking for some one-on-one counseling, consultation, Carrie is your girl. So I encourage you to reach out to her. Her information, again, is available to you one way or another. So whether that's in the description, you're looking at the screen, her information is there. Carrie, you want to talk about your business a little bit?
Sure. I just wanted to say thank you again, Gabrielle. Like, I think you did say that I think this is probably my fourth time on, because we did a couple different things on teacher wellness and trauma, and then you came on my Instagram. And so we've talked
Yeah.
a whole bunch, which is always great. But yeah, so I started Empowering Educator as sort of this counseling business with teachers to combat burnout through centering wellness. And since then, I've kind of shifted and pivoted to wanting to bring in like the other thing in my life that has brought me a lot of joy since leaving the classroom, which is comedy. So I'm trying to figure out a way of fusing comedy and education to kind of get teachers out of their lizard brain and into their wizard brain, as I recently found this phrasing that I really like, through an edutainment perspective. So educational entertainment. So I'm kind of in the process of all of that right now, but I'm always interested in connecting with teachers, current and former teachers, and anyone who is looking for a good laugh. I'm definitely your girl. So thanks so much, Gabrielle.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All that is great. So if you guys want, you're looking for those services, or you're looking for a laugh because she's into comedy as well, definitely reach out to her. She is all over that social media. So definitely follow her. Information, again, is at the bottom of your screen. If you happen to be watching this on video, and for my audio people, like I said, it's in the description. So however you are taking in this episode, it is at your fingertips. All right, Carrie, thank you again. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Gabrielle.
All right. Oh, whoa. Okay. All right. I'll put you off camera now. Okay. There we go. And all right, you guys, it looks like my battery is about to die. So, but yes, thank you guys for watching. So I encourage you guys, let me know what you thought about this episode oh, wait, let me take her thing off. Whoops. Okay. Hold on. Let me all right. So I put up my banner. All right, so I got to keep an eye on my phone. It looks like my battery is going. But yes, thank you guys so much for watching. And just to remind you that Hot Topics is a production of A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So if you would like to learn more about our company, what we have to offer, please go to our website, www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. So check us out if you're looking for a tutor, whether for yourself or for your child. We do work with adults and children. So please check us out. Our website again, www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. We are all over social media as well. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and there's a couple others. Follow us on all of our social media and stay in touch with us, you guys. And let us know what you thought about this episode by leaving a comment in the comment section below or in the comment thread. Or if you happen to be listening to this on like Spotify or Apple or any of those other podcast platforms, please leave us a rating. We definitely will appreciate the feedback. And oh, yes, and we have a text list. So Hot Topics has a text list. I encourage you to sign up for our texting list. Just text the code Hot Topics to, I got to get the phone. Oh, I see it. There it is. Text the code Hot Topics to 917-764-3975. That's 917-764-3975. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I am going to charge this phone and I will see you guys next time. Thank you guys again. And now I'm signing off. Bye.